Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the SHM podcast. A very special guest today. You can hear at TD Place in Ottawa for PWHL Ottawa games and Ottawa 67 games as the in-arena host. Please welcome Johanna Bernardi.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So, first of all, let's get into how you kind of got into this career, where you kind of went to school for all of this, and what made you want to get into this.
Yeah, for sure. So I went to school for journalism and I studied journalism at Carleton University. And I kind of knew that the area I wanted to work in was sports. So like a lot of the stories that I wrote and worked on in my time in school were very sport oriented. And that was always kind of my end goal. And then when I graduated university, kind of was like feeling this pull of like, okay, is my passion journalism or is my passion sport? And I wasn't entirely sure. So I was like, okay, I'm just gonna like I've done the journalism thing for 4 years and then I'm gonna like just pursue general sport. So I got really lucky when I graduated university. I had been a part of the Raven Sports Business Club in my time at Carleton. And they kind of just said to me, hey, do you want to stay? And I was like, yep, absolutely. So like any post grad's like nightmare of having to find a job was kind of alleviated for me, which I was really blessed with that. And I still work at Carleton, but my job has taken many forms in like the 3 years I've been at school. And so when I started, it was kind of like my job to make. So I basically just said yes to literally every single job opportunity that was offered to me. If there was a task to be done within the department, I was going to do it. I was the anthem singer, I was the DJ, like I did game day presentations, like I did basically every job that you could imagine. And part of that was being an in-game host because I had performing experience, I had journalistic experience, I have a theater background originally. So that was kind of how I started doing that role. And that was like super beneficial to my career because I worked as the in-game host for all of the big eight varsity teams at Carleton. So like anywhere from like football, soccer, rugby, hockey, basketball, which like really introduced me to different fan bases, even though everyone is still cheering for the Carleton Ravens. The basketball fans are different from the football fans, are different from the rugby fans, and also different environments. So like the field setup is different where the stands are more removed when you're on the field. Our basketball court, everyone is more close in together. So your interactions with the fans are different. And then the hockey arena here at Carleton is like very oddly set up. So like the fans are above and the ice is below. So they're super distant from the fans. You feel very disconnected. So I learned how to adapt to all those different skills and different settings, which I think adaptability is like a huge component in this job. And then I saw a posting at for the 67s that said like we're looking for an in-game host, and I'm really passionate about the OHL. That was like where my passion in hockey started, was with prospects and the Canadian Hockey League. And so I was like, this is perfect. So I applied, I auditioned, and then I got that role, which was super lucky. That was my first season, was 2022, 2023. So not this past season, but the season before. And then halfway through this season with the 67s, I knew PWHL Ottawa was coming to Ottawa, and I was like, I have to be involved. I don't know how, but I'm going to be a part of this somehow. And when I was working one of the 67s games, my manager came into my in-ear piece and said, hey, if PWHL Ottawa was interested in having you as a host, would you want to do it? And I was like, yes, please, I want to do it. And so then he was like, great, well, they want you, so I'll connect you and then you'll be good to go. And then that is how that started. So I kind of juggle many things. Like I work on the admin side of sport during the day, 9 to 5 at Carleton. And then I work media outside. But my passion has always been like some sort of journalism, media, and sport. That's really like my bread and butter. So I'm really lucky to work in the best industry for that.
Now, we'll jump right into PWHL Ottawa season ended a little while ago, but as you had mentioned that you wanted to work there in Summerall, how cool was it to you to have that come across you and them tell you that they wanted you? And how did that kind of set in? And were there any nerves right away where, hey, I wanted to do this and now they want me there?
Yeah, it was unbelievable. I think for me, like I didn't expect it to be given to me. Like I thought that I was prepared to go through an audition process and whatever was needed. So I was like constantly tracking the socials and like seeing what people were saying, like if they're going to audition for hosts or how people can be involved. So I was so honored to be chosen for that. And also like my parents had said to me once things got rolling, they're like, you are the first ever host for PWHL Ottawa. And I never saw myself as being like the first ever of anything. And so to have that sort of like claim was absolutely like insane. And it was just such like a remarkable season. I think it was different than the 67s with like a different fan base, different, we didn't know what we were getting into going into it, whereas like the CHL has like years of history behind it. So we had really no idea what to expect, but it was better than I think anyone could have ever imagined. It was more people than I had ever worked in front of before. Every game was like about 8,000 people. So the first game was like a little nerve wracking, seeing the stands like completely full. I was like, oh my goodness, that's a lot of people to be presenting in front of. But I'm actually like the kind of person who the more people, the better. I would hate to present in front of a group of 10 people, but thousands, sign me up. Like I'm the first one ready to talk. That was a little bit nerve wracking at first. And it was like a totally different beast with like different sponsors that I was like not used to with the 67s and different activities, things we hadn't done before. But it was just such like a treat. And I'm so honored to have been a part of it and be a part of this inaugural season. That was just the best season ever. Although on the ice, we hope it ended, we wish it ended a little bit differently, but it went right down to the wire.
Now, obviously, as a woman in sport, how cool was it to see, first of all, that the league was going to be coming to Ottawa, and then to have it there finally once you started working? How cool was it to see all the little girls there cheering on their favorite players, hoping that they can be them one day?
Yeah, it was super emotional. I tend to be an emotional person, but especially the first game, but even every game after that, I was like fighting back tears. It's just so unbelievable to get to see these kids look up to some people, like people who look like them and are them, and they can see that they can be that one day as well, especially in an industry that's traditionally male dominated. And I think for myself, like growing up, I've definitely realized the importance of representation in my own life. Like, had I not seen other women in roles similar to me or working in sports media, like on TSN, on Sportsnet, this is not something I ever would have thought I could pursue. And so now seeing that these little girls have people to look up to, and it's not unfathomable that they could have a career in professional hockey. Like, this is a reality. This could be you. And so I think that that was just so inspiring and like such a cool thing to be a part of. And I actually, during one of the PWHL Ottawa Fan Fest, I was walking around asking kids, like, what kind of questions would you want to ask the players? If you got to be me, what would you want to ask? And then they were telling me what they wanted. And then I was talking to these two little girls and they said, like, oh, well, we want to do your job. And I said, really? Like, would you rather play hockey or would you rather do my job? And they said, we want to do both. And I just said, you can. If that is what you want to do, 100% do both. And so I think you can already see the culture shifting. Now this is a reality for these girls. They can do whatever. And so it was just such a remarkable and amazing thing to be a part of. And I think that that's something that isn't lost on anybody involved, not lost on like staff, not lost on the game day production, and definitely not lost on the players. You could see that every game, they were so grateful for like everyone being there, and they were so generous with their time. They stopped for every kid, took pictures, like signed autographs, gave pucks for every single kid. And I think that that's just like everyone can feel the culture shifting, and it's such a remarkable thing to be a part of.
Now, as you mentioned there, you get a chance to interview some players, and whenever I have a player on, I always kind of ask, do you ever have a wow moment where with you, you're interviewing a player and you're like, oh my gosh, like I get to interview this player today?
Yeah, for sure. I've definitely had many of those moments. I think for PWHL, for me, was interviewing Brianne Jenner. That was like, obviously, she's someone I've watched in the Olympics for years and someone who felt very much like an established name in women's hockey already for me. And so interviewing her was just like, oh my gosh, like this is Brianne Jenner. And like, she has an Olympic gold medal. And here I am talking to her. And so it almost is kind of like this like feeling of like imposter syndrome kind of when you're going through that. But that was for me for PWHL. I think that was a really surreal moment. And then for 67s, my very first ever game that I worked, I did my first period intermission interview. So the first interview I ever did was with Vinnie Rohr, who's a Montreal Canadiens prospect. And I grew up a Habs fan, and I still am a Habs fan. And so like for me, that was like always a dream, was to interview a Habs prospect. And then all of a sudden, like they're like, okay, you're going to interview Vinnie Rohr first. I was like, no way. And so that was like definitely like a pinch me moment, like full circle. I've come to where I wanted to be. So that was super cool.
Now, just talk about how you got into being an in-arena host and what was your first job in doing that?
Yeah, so my first time doing in-arena hosting was with at Carleton. I think the first sport I must have worked was probably football. just based off of the way the season goes. I wasn't picky. I was happy to do any sport and I was looking to grab the mic on any situation. I have a theater background. So I grew up acting like I'm have an untraditional route to sports. Like I was not an athlete. I did not play any sports growing up. And I was not interested in playing sports. I like to watch sports, but I didn't want to play. And so I come from a theater background. So performing is very second nature to me. And that really, like, for me, the reason I pursued sports journalism specifically with the root in broadcast was because it kind of like combines my two passions of sport and performing, still talking in front of people and doing that sort of thing. So that's what kind of led me to in arena hosting in that way. And I think it's a good avenue for like progressing my career in the future. Eventually, if I want to get into broadcasting, which I do, then that's like a kind of experience related to that. So that could definitely translate. And I just, like I said, like I was just the kind of person who's willing to say yes to everything. So I just said yes to being the in arena host. I was like going from singing the national anthem at a Carleton game, and then all of a sudden, next thing you knew, I was hosting. I much prefer hosting to singing the anthem, but I just being willing to do anything. That was kind of my avenue that led me to hosting, and now it's like my greatest passion. I love it so much.
Now, what's the strangest request you've ever received from a fan, if you've had any?
I don't know. I do get like some weird requests. Like definitely a lot of times people are asking like, can you put me on the camera? Can you get me on the ice? That's like pretty common. I think sometimes for me, what I find odd is when fans ask for my autograph. I'm like, the first time I gave an autograph, I was so like shocked. I didn't have an autograph. I was like, oh, I don't know. And so I just like did my full signature like I would do on a form. And then I was like, that took so long. Like that was weird. And so I had to kind of like come up with my own autograph. The 67s kind of helped me with it a little bit. They were upset when I signed my autograph and there was no number. So they assigned me a number. So now I sign 99 at the end. So I guess they were associating me with a great one. So that like worked out. So but definitely being asked for an autograph always is kind of shocking. I always say, I'm like, are you sure? You realize I'm not on the team. Are you sure you want my autograph? And when they're fully sure, then I'm like, okay, I'll sign for you. But just want to make sure that I'm not signing anyone's jersey unwanted.
What's like the weirdest thing someone's asked you to sign?
Usually, like it's pretty normal, but some I find like the 67s jerseys is like the most common. Is weird because I'm like, I don't you got all the other players signing it, and then you're just gonna have me, and you're like, who is this random signature? You'll never know. But so I'm always a little bit hesitant about signing like jerseys and stuff, but that's always the most shocking. I'm like, I'm not a player, but I'll sign it anyways if they really want it.
I feel like there's gonna be some Ottawa fans that just start getting your jersey and your name on it, and they're just gonna have you sign that starting next year
I
now.
would love that. Please, everybody, get Johanna jerseys, and I'll sign any Johanna jerseys.
Now, obviously, 67's playing at TD Place, same with PWHL Ottawa. Just talk about having an arena like that with the facilities and everything, and how cool it is to work in the OHL and PWHL with a facility like that.
Yeah, it's a great facility. It's a super nice arena. And I really love how it's kind of like it's a tight feeling, but there's still a lot of fans in there. And so you feel really close. And I think that's something that's like unique about a lot of OHL arenas is that you have that like close quarter feeling, but we can seat up to like 8,000, just over 8,000, I believe. So it is a pretty large number of people at the end of the day. And it's definitely like a storied arena. I think like I'm not from Ottawa originally. So when I moved to Ottawa, like my parents, who also aren't from Ottawa, but they'd always be like, oh, the Civic Center, the Civic Center. And I'd be like, what is the Civic Center? Like, that is not a thing that exists. But it's TD Place now, but like it has such a history. It's taken on so many evolutions. And so it's really cool to be a part of that and to see like the banners hanging. Like this year was the 25th anniversary of the 1999 Ottawa 67s Memorial Cup championship team. And we had like an event for that, but like that banner is always hanging there. And like for me, I think like that's the year I was born. So I'm like, this speaks to the storiedness of the franchise. Is like it's been around for my whole life before then, obviously, but like that was like the pinnacle in my with the year I was born. And so it's really cool to like see that history and know how many like great names have skated on that ice. We have like the banners hanging of the retired numbers. Like Brian Campbell was someone, his jersey was retired when I was living in Ottawa, and I like watched him growing up when he played on the Chicago Blackhawks. So to like have that person that I like looked up to when I was a kid see like his jersey hanging there, and knowing that we're paving the future of other people whose jerseys will most likely eventually hang from those rafters, and then PWHL players who hopefully their names can hang from the rafters as well. It's such a great facility to be a part of, and to be downtown, like in that Lansdowne area. Every time you like leave the stadium or like even just walking around there and not on a game day, you're seeing people in jerseys. There's people in PWHL jerseys, people in 67s jerseys. Like the Red Blacks play there as well, so people in Red Blacks jerseys. So it's definitely like that community feeling, and it's a really great place to play for that reason.
Now you mentioned that you've been an OHL fan. Just talk about how you kind of got into OHL and now a surreal moment knowing that you work in that league.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm from like the Barrie area originally. So the Barrie Colts were the closest OHL team to where I grew up. And so that was like something a lot of people did like for like hockey, like team events. So my brother's hockey team would go, we'd go to Barrie Colts games. And my dad actually was for a period of time was the vice principal at the high school where the Barrie Colts go, or I don't know if they still do, but where they did when I was growing up. And so often my dad would get tickets through the players, and so this was around the time like Aaron Ekblad was on the Barrie Colts. So we were going regularly to the games thanks to the players and like thanks to people like Aaron Ekblad. So that was like a super cool. That was like kind of my introduction, but I never really felt like committed to a team. Like I liked the Barrie Colts, but I wasn't like totally pro Barrie Colts. They were the team that I knew basically. And then as I got older, I started taking more of an interest in like prospects and like head of the NHL draft. And I always like read the Hockey News NHL draft like magazine. So I knew what kind of the prospects. And then for me, like the first player that really like inspired me to totally following the OHL committedly was Mitch Marner before he was drafted to Toronto. Like I said, I'm a Habs fan, so that was like a disappointing draft having him go to Toronto, but that's fine. I won't hold too much of a grudge against it. But so I really started watching the London Knights closely, and that was like before their 2016 Memorial Cup run. And like when you look at that team now, like okay, Christian Dvorak, now he's a Montreal Canadian. So like he was on that line, and Matthew Tkachuk now playing in the Eastern Conference Final of the NHL. So there's a lot of like huge names on that team. And so I was following them very closely, and that was sort of where my passion started. And then I moved to Ottawa quickly after in 2017 for university. And slowly, like I creeped to the 67s, and then I was been a full-blown 67s fan since then, following their players. A lot of them have had a lot of success. Austin Keating, who left the team a couple of years ago, he just had like the most winningest season in U Sports history with the University of New Brunswick, and just take home the U Sports National Championship. So people like that, following them throughout the years. And so then for me to like work in the 67s, like that was a thing that I did regularly in my university experience. Like it'd be a Friday night, we'd be like, what should we do? Okay, let's buy 67s tickets and then we'll like hang out in Lansdowne after. But like that was always like the start of like our Friday night or our Saturday night. And my roommate and I were like super passionate about going to a lot of the games and following the players and things like that. And so to like, I'd been to all the games, I knew what the game day experience was like. And then all of a sudden that was me like cultivating that game day experience was definitely like a pinch me moment. Like I had been that person in the stands and now I'm the person on the ice. And so it was definitely like a full like 360 moment that was just so exciting, and it's such like an amazing thing to be a part of.
Well, you can get your hopes up maybe because Marner could be out of Toronto soon, so he could
Yeah,
go to Montreal if he has them on his no trade list. You never know.
fingers crossed.
Now, obviously, you grow up, you get the Colts there, got watching guys like Aaron Ekblad that we get to now watch excel in the NHL. Just talk about growing up as an OHL fan and seeing so many of these great players and how they're having success now at the next level.
I think that's the thing that really drove my passion in the OHL in the first place, and like the CHL in general. And like many Canadians, like I grew up, I still am like obsessed with the World Juniors, like being sat and not moving for like 2 weeks just to watch every game of the World Juniors. And that's what really like inspired me is you see these athletes grow from year to year, And then when they're in the OHL, and sometimes you can see like huge drastic jumps. Like when I look at some of the players on the 67s, when I started last year, maybe it was their rookie season or like their second year versus this year, they have like made dividends. Like it's unbelievable to see how much they've improved. And that's the thing I love about it. And then seeing like, okay, now their draft stock maybe is rising or whatever. And next thing you know, they're in the OHL and making their dreams come true. And like I'm like very much like I'm a dreamer. I always have had big dreams. I've been a big dreamer and I want my dreams to come true and I want that for other people as well. And so for me, this is like the pinnacle of watching people's dreams come true. They work so hard and it's definitely given me a different perspective on it since working with the 67s, like getting to know the athletes better and getting to know the players and seeing their journey up close. It's like such like a sense of pride when they get drafted because I'm like, I know how hard you've worked and I know like how much of a good person you are beyond being a good hockey player and now you're getting drafted. It's unbelievable. Last year we had 4 67s drafted in my first season and it was just like I was like, oh my God, every time one of them was drafted, I was like, yeah, like I'm so proud of you. And then like Luca Pinelli just signed his entry level contract a couple of weeks ago with the Columbus Blue Jackets. And I was like so happy for him, like so well deserved. And so it's like so cool to kind of be like right beside watching that journey happen for these players. That's, I think, the best part about being involved in the CHL and junior hockey in any shape or form.
Now, for anyone that's listening around Christmas time, I think the only tradition Canadians have is sitting down on Boxing Day to January 5th to watch the World Juniors. This year, they're in Ottawa.
Yes.
Obviously, I'm assuming you're going to be putting your name in for that. Just talk about hearing that it's coming to your city and how cool will be, even if you can't get it, to know that, hey, I get to go to a World Juniors and experience this.
Yeah, I'm so excited. I actually went to the World Juniors. I think it was the 2017 World Juniors that was hosted in Toronto. I went to the Boxing Day game against Russia, and that was like super cool. Like when I look back at the players on that team, like Dylan Strome, Matt Barzal, Taylor Radish, like all these people who I watched in the OHL, and then they were on the World Juniors, and now they're killing it in the NHL. I think, yeah, those are the people on that, some big names from that team. But so I'm so excited for it to like be here in the city that I love in the like in the arena that I love. I know the Canada Games will be at Canadian Tire Center, but the other group will be playing here at TD Place, which is just absolutely unbelievable. I'm so excited. I really want to also be a part of that in any way that I can. I would love to host. I would love to just be there as a fan. I think the atmosphere is unbeatable of what you experience as like a Canada fan when you're playing on home ice in that World Juniors environment, just surrounded by other Canadians. Like it gives you goosebumps. And so I'm so excited for it to come here and to get to watch. And I hope that some 67s get to play on, represent their countries because that would be super cool.
Now, obviously, living in Ottawa, it's a pretty big sports city. You got the Centers, obviously, with the 67s, now a PWHL team. Just talk about being in that city and having so many sports at your disposal all year to go and watch.
Yeah, it's a very lucky situation to be in. And it's like there's so many choices, especially with hockey. Like you got 67s, PWHL Senators, like you mentioned. There's football, like there's soccer, there's basketball. And also beyond like these like professional or junior sports, we also have two universities with great teams on both sides. Obviously, I'm biased towards the Ravens, but I'll be nice to the GGs for this one time. This is the only time I'll allow it. But they all have amazing teams. You're really not at a shortage for finding sports to watch. We have baseball with the Ottawa Titans. We have so many amazing sports to be a part of. I think it's a very lucky position to be in. And like as a person from a small town, originally, like if I was going to see any sport, like a professional sport or a junior sport, I had to drive somewhere. And it wasn't so much something I could like just do on a Friday night or on a Saturday night because it wasn't accessible to me unless my parents were willing to drive me anywhere until I got my own license. So to like be in this opportunity where I see like these young kids coming down by themselves, maybe like 12, 13, they're at the games by themselves. That's so lucky. That was not something I got to experience as a kid. So I definitely take advantage of all the amazing sports that we have to offer here. And I think Ottawa is a sports city. Like people here love their sports and they're very passionate. And being actually, I didn't know this until I moved to Ottawa because like growing up in Toronto area, like it was pretty like in terms of hockey, like there were mostly Leafs fans and then there were some Habs fans, maybe some Bruins and like some Pittsburgh Penguins. I was like, those were the main fan bases growing up. So I was pretty sure that nobody cheered for the Ottawa Senators. I was like, yeah, they don't have fans. And then I moved to Ottawa, and like every other person was like, oh yeah, I'm like a born and raised Sens fan. I was like, what? And it's true. Like people here are passionate and they love their teams and they love the Senators and they love the Red Blacks, they love the Titans, they love 67s. And so it's definitely a very privileged opportunity to have to be a part of it.
They're also getting a national lacrosse team the
Yes.
coming year, so that's going to be cool. And I think that's definitely a sport that's going to be thriving. Moving up from the team in New York, obviously, so a lot of guys will be coming back. But let's talk about that if you know that much about that sport and how cool it's going to be having another professional team in the city of Ottawa.
Yeah, I'm super excited to see lacrosse and see how Ottawa embraces that. I know they will. I know there's a big lacrosse community here. One of my best friend's brothers actually plays on the Toronto Rock. So I have a little bit of a connection through that way. But it's, and so to see even his excitement of having a team in his hometown, even though he's on the Rock, is super exciting. And I know that it's going to be something that people here are going to love. And I'm definitely going to be at a few games. So it should be fun.
Now, transitioning back into hockey, obviously, World Juniors coming, big things coming for the 67s, PWHL Ottawa second season. Just talk about the excitement once the hockey season starts rolling again in a couple months.
Yeah, I'm always counting down to September. Like, when is the OHL season going to begin again? I don't think it's been confirmed when the PWHL season is going to start this season, so I'm not sure. But for PWHL, I'm so excited to have that momentum carried from what the first season was. And I think fans and players alike are going to come back extra hungry. We were so close to the playoffs, we could taste it, and then just lost it at the last minute. But I think it's very interesting, like the league, you can see the parity in the league. The bottom two teams that made the playoffs are in the finals right now, going to game 5. The last game went into double overtime and won 1-0 was the final score. So there's definitely great parity across the league. So I think everyone is going to be super excited to get back into it and see, like, keep that momentum rolling, build the fan base. I know a lot of people probably weren't expecting it to be as successful as they were, so they didn't buy tickets. And then I've got all these people being like, I can't get tickets, they're all sold out. And so I think people are going to be more eager to get their tickets in advance, which will be amazing. Hopefully we can keep growing the fan base. And 67s, I'm always excited for the 67s season to begin. I think this team as well, like, is hungry, and there was a lot of really strong young players on the team this past season, and I think that they're just going to come back even better than ever next season with some like key veterans returning. We'll see. I have to wait and see, but I believe there'll be some key veterans returning, and so it's just super exciting to get things going and have people come back. The 67s tends to be a bit more fan wise of like a slow build up. It starts kind of slow and then people get into it and then the city gets buzzing about the team. So hoping we can like start it off with a bang like we did 2 seasons ago and get people right in the arena right away. It's definitely a great thing to be a part of in Ottawa. So everyone come out to 67s and PWHL. Not that I'm peddling for tickets or anything, but
Now, obviously, with PWHL Ottawa, the league's been doing some really cool things, a bunch of games in NHL markets. I'm sure Ottawa's going to get one eventually, Canadian Tire Center, but just talk about seeing the league grow the way it is, especially with games like that. Like they had one in Toronto, Montreal, a couple other NHL cities. Just how cool of an experience is that?
yeah, that has been absolutely unbelievable. I think like there were a lot of skeptics when this league began, a lot of people like not thinking it was going to take off, not going to be successful. But then you're seeing like 10 minutes in to ticket sales being live, these huge venues are selling out. The Scotiabank Arena is sold out and they've got to open more seats, and then it's sold out again in the next 10 minutes once they open those more seats. And so I think like that just speaks to the interest people have in this sport. And like we say women's hockey right now, but to me, like, it's just hockey. Like there's a men's league and a women's league, but it's professional hockey no matter which way you slice it, not based on gender. And I think that we're seeing that people are passionate about it and people are excited to see this league and be a part of it. And it's not just for women. I think that maybe was like people thought, oh, only women are going to watch this. That's not true. Like everyone is watching it. I look out into the stands and I see every single type of person at the games you can imagine. And every single type of person at the games are cheering as loud as they can and are being supportive and are fully invested in it. And so I think that's fantastic. And I hope that as time goes on, that these it becomes regular that these teams are playing in these huge arenas and selling them out. And I hope that becomes a common thing. And I think like like PWHL Toronto, like they were playing in a small arena. And of course, like you don't want to shoot for the stars right away. You don't know. It could have flopped. They didn't know what was going to happen. But then to see it be so successful, like they need to be moving up. They need a bigger arena for next season. So we'll see what happens for them. But I would hope that they played a couple of games at the Coca-Cola Coliseum in the playoffs. And I think that hopefully that's something they can maintain, is to continue bringing in these big things. I think really the only way for this league is up. And it's just such an exciting time to be a part of it and to watch this happen.
Now, one viral moment that came out of Ottawa this year, Justin Trudeau at a PWHL Ottawa game. Talk about that viral clip that went around of him clapping. How funny was that to see?
Oh, that was very funny. I think it was interesting, like being there in person, like seeing the prime minister. It was kind of like shocking. I remember I came out of the bathroom and there was like a bunch of people like huddled in a circle, and I was like, I don't know what's going on here, but like I'm just gonna go to my spot by the glass. And I like when I stopped, I like see this man, and I'm like, this man looks very familiar. I'm like, how do I know this person? And then because I wasn't expecting to see the prime minister, I was like, oh my God, I was like, that's Justin Trudeau. So like very shocking to like see him at first. But it was hilarious. I think like it's interesting for him. Like he's obviously such a public figure. Everybody recognizes him. And so like everyone's always like turning around, like looking at him, like, oh, there's the prime minister. But he was genuinely just like enjoying the game. I think like anybody was, but it was definitely very funny to have like see that moment come out. I don't think I witnessed it live. But it was hilarious seeing that afterwards and being like, you know what? He seemed to be very excited about it. So I love that for him, and keep showing that excitement. Hopefully he'll come out to more games and keep being an advocate for the league.
I think the craziest thing is you're sitting in the stands with like other fans.
Yes.
Like you're the prime minister of this country, and you're putting yourself in a situation where you're sitting with like a random person that, hey, maybe not might not agree with what you're doing with the country, but hey, if you're comfortable enough to do that and sit around 8,000 people, then go ahead. But
Yeah,
uh
and a lot of times, like when he exited and like entered the arena, he didn't go through the main gates. But when it was intermissions, like he was standing up and like in the aisles, like taking pictures with people. So people were coming up to him. So he definitely was like he was not in like some VIP seating area. He was right there with everybody else, which I was also quite shocked when I saw him going up to his seats. I was like, there's no way you're sitting amongst all these people. But he did it. So, and then he went viral. So it worked out for in more ways than one.
Now, obviously, in the city of Ottawa, some big moments the last couple of years. 67s have been pretty good. Obviously, a good successful season for PWHL Ottawa. But a couple of years ago, they had the under-17 World Hockey Championship, I believe, and the Canadian women's team actually played against the one Canadian team. So talk about how cool of an experience that was to see women in sport playing against the men.
Yeah, I think that that's super like important and something that we're seeing more often. I think like even when you think back to like historically the battle of the sexes in tennis, and then even I think Serena Williams and Roger Federer played against each other in more recent history. They're both retired now, so this was before that. But that's definitely something that's been going on. I wasn't here for that U17 tournament experience, but I think that that's something show that women can hang with the guys. And I think that that's super cool and super important to show that skill level. And hopefully that's something that we can see more of in the future. And I know that like I'm starting to see like on social media and stuff, it looks like PWHL Ottawa and the Ottawa Senators have like a little bit of a friendship going. They've got like a duo. I think there was a TikTok I saw the other day of them all hanging out. And so hopefully that's something that like maybe that's something in the future for them that they could have like a little fun scrimmage sort of situation.
Now, transitioning back in the OHL here, obviously a tough second round loss to the Oshawa Generals. Just talk about the whole experience of playoffs in TD Place and how it was rocking every single night.
Yeah, the fans get really behind the team during the playoffs, which is amazing. We have the tradition of doing the stripe on the face for every round. And so like to see fans also doing that is super cool. Everyone's like really into it. The fans are passionate. There's especially like against Ottawa there or Oshawa, sorry, there's a bit of a rivalry there. And the games tend to be pretty physical. So the fans really get into it and are very vocal and yelling, which is amazing. And we saw that not this past season, but the season before, when we were playing the Peterborough Petes in the second round. It was, again, that's a huge rivalry. So people get super vocal and super involved, which is amazing. It's such a cool atmosphere to be a part of. And I think also, like, looking specifically with the Generals, this season, the season before, we beat them in the first round, 4-1, and then they beat us in the second round this season. And that just like speaks to the fluidity of junior hockey. Like things change so quickly and the dynamics change. Peterborough, who won the OHL last year, they didn't even make the playoffs. So I think it really speaks to how things change, which is like quite interesting. But to have that consistent success for the team the past few years, I think gets people really excited and ready to be behind them.
We recently had Jacob Oster on from the Oshawa Generals, and one question I always ask people in the OHL is your top three favorite OHL rings and least favorite. And Oster said Ottawa was one of his least favorites, and he's from Ottawa.
Interesting. Why did he say why?
Um, I forget his reasoning. He just,
Hmm. Interesting. We're gonna have to change that.
or
And
maybe it was one of his top three actually. Yeah,
it
because
better be.
his 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 least favorite, or maybe it was actually. I gotta think back here. I think like because he said London's number one. Like,
Yeah, which is fair.
and anyone in the OHL knows that you can't deny 9,000 people. I experienced that shooting in playoffs this year. It was absolutely electric there.
Yeah.
Um, he also had Barry up there as one of his least favorites, but we'll
Oh,
ignore that
interesting.
Aussie. But he also had the Bayshore as a top three, which is like
Hmm.
Sound,
I've
which
never been there, so I can't judge.
3,000 or 3,500 seats, the lowest seating capacity in the league, unless you count Mississauga home games. But
Interesting.
yeah, it was wild. But let's hear your top three and least favorite three of the any OHL rinks you've traveled to.
Okay, I think I've only been to 4, so this is going to be tough. My first favorite is obviously going to be TD Place. Just that's a bias, and nothing can beat that. But a close second would be Budweiser Gardens in London, of course. And then the only other two I've been to, it's not called this any. It was the Barry Molson Center when I was a kid. I don't know. It's Paul Sadlin Arena now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. And then the other one I've been to is it's also changed names. It was the Hershey Center in Mississauga. I think it's Paramount Fine Foods, but they're not playing there next year. So
No.
I guess we'll just erase that one, and that will be the least favorite because it ceases to exist in the league. And then I'll put not the BMC, the Sadlin Arena in third. I think it's kind of like nostalgic for me. I do also like it. Kind of has a similar vibe to TD Place in like terms of like the seating arrangement and like just the fans going straight up. So it's kind of similar to that. So I guess those are the 4 arenas I've been to, but I need to go to more, clearly.
Now talk about obviously there's 20 arenas in the OHL. What are some of the ones that are on your bucket list that you definitely want to make it out to?
For sure. I think that I would like to go to Peterborough, I think just because, especially like for a 67s game, because they have such a rivalry that I would be like interested to be a part of that. It's like, I think it's more game specific. Like I would like to be part of that. I think I'd also like to see like Erie versus London. I know that they have like quite a bit of like tense rivalry there. And then probably I'll go with like the Odd in Kitchener. Just I know that that's like a historical arena as well. So that'd be cool to see that. My brother lived in Waterloo for a while, so he's been to the Odd many times, and he talks big hype about it. So I'll give him a chance, and I'll see what it's like.
Now, obviously, OHL season wrapped up a couple of weeks ago. London Knights taking the OHL championship easily against the Oshawa Generals, which I don't think anyone expected it to go that way. Memorial Cup still going on, so just talk about seeing London and Saginaw having success in that tournament right now.
Yeah, it's cool. I think I think I saw a stat something about they're like the first time in like X amount of years that 2 teams have like started the Memorial Cup 2-0. So it's super exciting to see that. We don't see the teams that often because they're in the West, so I only see them in our arena once a year. But I honestly wasn't surprised. Like Oshawa was a good team and is like physical, but London even though I think we took them to shootout this year in our arena, London was just like is next level. And you just know like the history of London is that their coaching and with the Dale Hunter. And so they're pretty unremarkable or pretty remarkable, I should say. So there it wasn't a surprise for me to see them taking the whole thing, and it's so exciting to see their success as well. It's cool for Saginaw to be doing so well in their home arena as the hosts. So you kind of love that story of like maybe they'll get to win in front of their home fans. I don't know what's going to happen, but it's really exciting to watch the games. It's a great time to be a junior hockey fan.
So I think tomorrow is definitely going to be the game of the tournament. There's a lot of lead up. Obviously, it was a Western Conference final matchup. There's now some beef between a couple players that we don't need
Yeah.
to get into right now, but that will be a discussion for after the season. If I can get those guys on, and we'll see how that goes. But I think that a lot of eyes are going to be on Saginaw tomorrow night. Obviously, you've got Drummondville and Moose Jaw tonight, but I think everyone's looking forward to that London Saginaw game tomorrow because it's just going to be a back and forth. Saginaw's got to redeem themselves from a Western Conference final loss. London's got all the pressure on them with having a spotlight on Sim, I feel like. But
Yeah.
even last night, like, talk about seeing there's not that many fights in the Memorial Cup anymore, but seeing two guys go toe to toe, like how crazy was that to experience?
Yeah, that was quite cool to see. Also, it was very cool. They had like that other camera angle where like the cameraman was on the ice. And I always joke like I would never want to be involved. I would not want to be on the ice during that. So shout out to that camera person being very brave. But it is quite exciting to see that sort of rivalry. It's very heated, and I think that's something that you see in junior hockey a lot. Of course, like the players are young, so it's different in that way. But when you're like seeing these people often, these teams regularly, there's blood that is going to be spilled at some point. But it's interesting, like you mentioned in the Memorial Cup, you don't see these teams ever until maybe the Memorial Cup, especially when you're playing not London Saginaw, but when you're playing against another conference. So super interesting to see that. But I think it just speaks to the passion that these players have, and they're just things are boiling over. But it's an interesting time. I'm not pro fighting, obviously, it's a bit dangerous, but I think that sometimes it happens and it has its place. So
Now, one moment I want to bring up last year against Peterborough goalie fight. How crazy was that to experience?
that was insane. And actually, this is like a little behind the scenes. So I don't remember what period that happened, but we were supposed to interview Colin McKenzie in the next break. And I remember like watching him skate out going, oh no, oh no. And then they were just like, the second he like dropped his gloves, and I was like, we all just like looked at each other and we're like, no, cut the interview. We're not doing an interview at all because we've just had a goalie fight. Like the players are heated, they're boiling over. So we cut that. But that was crazy. That I don't think that's something I've ever seen in my life. And it's kind of become like a claim to fame, like it always plays in our starting video package before games. Um, Unfortunately, Colin wasn't mostly successful in that fight, but it was definitely wild. And I think the fans were going crazy. There's already so much animosity with Peterborough, and then for that to happen, it was just like, whoa, I could not believe that. And that's something that I'll remember for a long time.
I think the one craziest thing about TD Place is both teams when they enter the ice, they're right beside each other. Like
Yes.
that's gonna boil over one day. Like something's gonna happen. And I'm sure over the years something has, but especially after a moment like that, like these two goalies have to go off the ice together and like walk down the tunnel. Like you've seen in other leagues, like it's happened in ECHL where they'll go and like fight in the tunnel or something. Like it's wild to know that like you've got an OHL arena where both teams are coming out at like the same spot.
Yeah.
Like,
It's quite interesting dynamic to sometimes like not even after a heated moment, but if I'm in the tunnel before the teams come out, whether for like warm up or the start of the game or start of a period, to see like the dynamics of the team, especially like the away team goes on first and they have to walk past where the 67s are in order to get onto the ice. And the 67s are already waiting, lining up. So it's just like interesting, like, do they talk to each other? Do they not? What do they say? Do they sometimes they're friendly with each other? Maybe it's someone they played with growing up or like a past teammate, so they'll wave or haha make a joke. But it's very interesting to see like what that dynamic is. But like in a tense game, like you do not want to be in that tunnel unless you're a security guard because you don't know anything could happen. But I've not seen anything crazy. Everyone has been pretty well behaved in my time.
Now, last one here before we wrap up. If you had any advice to maybe a girl that's trying to get in this industry or anyone that's trying to get in this industry, what would it be?
Yeah, it's I think like a lot of it is practice and like being comfortable. You just have to keep practicing and you have to do it in front of a lot of people. But I think most importantly, something that like I've taken away in my past 2 years of doing this is it's such lame advice, but it's true, is to be yourself. I like this industry is extremely subjective. And so people are gonna love you and some people are not gonna like you very much. And you cannot let that get to you. And so at the end of the day, there's no point in pretending to be someone you're not because someone isn't going to be pleased. So regardless, so you might as well just be yourself and have fun with it and show your passion. I think like that's something for girls, especially is might be timid to show your passion because you know that it's often we experience like microaggressions, people make little comments, oh, well, what do you know, whatever. Do not be afraid to show your passion. Like, do not let that deter you. People love what other people are passionate about. And so if you show your passion, people are going to get behind you and be excited about that. I'm the person who is yelling during the games. I'm yelling at the players. I'm yelling at the refs. I'm banging on the glass. I'm up. I'm jumping. I'm that person. And I'm sure some people don't like it, but a lot of people are like, Johanna, we love to watch you during the games because you're so funny. And like, I don't even see the fans. I'm so in the game. I'm like, as far as I'm concerned, I'm on the ice. So I don't even realize that people are watching me, but just show your passion and people will love that and they'll want to be a part of it as well.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Johanna, for coming on today. It was a pleasure, and we look forward to seeing you have success next season.
Thank you so much for having me. It was great.